Welcome to Brothers on the Board, the podcast where we become better teachers together. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are here once again. This is episode 10 of Brothers on the Board. And let me tell you, there's a majority of podcasts, a huge percentage that never make it to number 10, but not us, baby. We just keep rolling. We did it. We score.
That's
so
awesome.
we just keep going. So we're back today. We have what we think is going to be a super interesting episode. Today we're talking about why are teachers leaving the field? And even better yet, what can we do about it? So as always, my name's John. I'm joined by my brother Wes, and today we have a special guest. We have Brian Hershey here, and he's going to introduce himself in just a minute. But he's a teacher, spent plenty of time in the field, has worked in a variety of different ways in education, and has been conducting some research into why teachers are leaving at such an alarming rate, and ultimately, what can we do about it? So, Brian, it's good to have you, man. I really appreciate you coming on and being our first guest, and it really does help us out a tremendous amount. If you would care to introduce yourself and just let people know kind of who you are and what you're working on, that would be awesome.
Okay, well, first off, thank you guys for having me. I mean, I feel kind of privileged to be a part of number 10. Okay,
I know, right?
Number 10. I'm it. Okay,
Yeah.
I kind of feel like a celebrity here. It's kind of neat. But no, as you mentioned, my name is Brian Hershey. I was a teacher for 17 years of English and language arts, and throughout that entire time frame, I've oh gosh, I've experienced a lot. Not only just kind of the ebb and flows of education in and of itself, but just acquiring year after year of professional development. I ended up getting a second master's degree in creative writing, fully letters trained so that I could actually teach and work with decodables and teaching kids how to read for those who struggle even the most. But I am I'm like a lot of the people who have just said enough is enough, and I decided to take on some other projects and take my career down a different path altogether. So now I am an author. I am fully certified as an editor, a book editor. I do have my own publishing label. I've also written decodable books for DK Publishing, and they're set to come out sometime next year. I don't know when. I don't know when their print card and everything else. They just said, "We'll get back to you." I said, "Okay, that's fine." And then I've landed a position currently working as a content developer for a Benchmark Education Company. And that's currently what I'm doing now, in addition to running my own publishing label. So that's me pretty much in a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big nutshell, man.
I was about to say, that is like a walnut shell, Like, that's not a small nutshell,
Packed a lot into that shell.
That is a big resume. I didn't realize that resume was going to be that long. So I'm excited to hear some of these things.
Dude, he took a deep breath before he got into that resume.
You're inflating it too much. It's nothing. It's just years and years of forced labor. How about that?
Well, that's what teaching is at this point. I'm convinced that that's the case. So you have been working. I know that we have worked together in the past, and I know you were working on a book where you were looking at teacher shortages and what we can ultimately do to kind of fix this problem. I think the statistic that I saw, and I'm sure that you'll be able to tell me, is that 30% of teachers within their first 5 years leave the field. So can you tell us just a little bit about that book and that work and kind of sort of what you've been doing with that?
Yeah, sure. It stems back to just all of the different things that, as I was going through my 17 years of teaching, and wondering why after 10 years, somebody would leave. After 15 years, somebody would leave. Or you get these people saying, I'm retiring early and I would rather go and work elsewhere. And it really just begged the question of, why is this happening? Why is this happening to everybody that I know? Mentors that were mentoring me, they're just all of a sudden gone one day. And it just became burn my side, so to speak, as to, okay, there's something here that we're not addressing. And it needs to be addressed because public education is one of the greatest things that our country can provide. It's very patriotic because it says, here's a problem, and we're going to educate our kids, our children, to help fix that problem on an ongoing basis. And that's the most patriotic thing that you can do, is recognizing the problem and go to fix it. But yet so many of us that were saying when we first started, I'm called to do this. I'm inspired to do this. This is my purpose. And we get really, really excited about it. And then all of a sudden it's like gone. And I just had to know, well, what's happening. And so that was kind of the impetus of why I started that research and why I started that question. And oh man, did I unlock Pandora's box.
Oh, I'm sure. And as you were talking there, and it kind of made me think, and this is just kind of a bonus thought here that I sort of just had. Do you think that teaching is a field that's just really not as advertised? So you go through college, you take these gen ed courses, you take these pedagogy courses, and then you get out and you get into the field. Do you think that that's something, and Wes, you can kind of speak on that because you're a little closely more removed from college than we are. Like, is that something that you would say is a problem, that colleges don't really represent or teaching for what it really is until you get into it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that you learn about 5% of what you're going to actually use in the classroom in college. Getting out and doing it. Every teacher I've ever talked to says that, like, it does not prepare you for what it's going to be like. And there's no real way to do that other than just get in there and do it, right? To develop those skills. So I definitely agree. I think that it's not preparing.
Yeah, I have to second that. I mean, there's such a gap and a disconnect from the college level to the actual application of things. So I remember thinking to myself, when I was a first year teacher, I went through my entire college education and first master's degree in a month. And then I was like,
Yeah.
now what? So, and it really was that kind of a situation where I better start swimming pretty hard here. Otherwise I'm going to drown, or this is not going to work out for me. Even though I spent many, many, many hours, thousands of hours, thousands of dollars trying to get an education to go in and teach. And you literally get hit in the face with, this is not what they told me it was going to be. And that happens very fast.
Back on episode 1, we talked about proximity. And the idea that through college they're like, proximity, and then you get into teaching and you walk over, and there was once a girl who I stood next to while she was talking, and she literally grabbed her desk and moved it like 4 feet away from me. I'm like, let's see, I don't remember this part of the class. What am I supposed to do now? What's the next step?
Yeah, right.
So
what happens when they run?
I don't know what to do. So okay, yeah, I agree. I think that is a major problem, in that teachers aren't necessarily being prepared for the challenges that they're going to face once they get into the field. So you've been working on this book, you've been collecting this data, you've been working through this research. Can you tell us just a little bit about kind of the methods you have used to sort of collect this data? I know that you was working with some surveys and a few other things. Can you just kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I generated a survey. It was just a formal survey that was asking very objective questions, simple questions that really was designed to either dispel some of the myths that are going on about why teachers are leaving, but also gain a little bit more insight into, okay, what research topics do I got to dive deeper in? So I started off with that, and the goal was to actually get 1,000 responses from the different teachers. I started with the schools that I worked at before, and just started to spread out from there. And then I created an advertisement on Facebook and sent it out, and I got much more feedback coming from across the country and other people I graduated high school with. So that was the starting point. And it really did bring in a lot of topics that I said, okay, I need to do a deep dive on this. I need to figure this out a little bit more. And so with that, you dive into Edutopia and see if there's the surface level articles there. And then you see what links they have, and you just keep going and going and going until you get down to where you start repeating yourself with the same finding. And you're like, okay, well, that's pretty accurate then. I've read 10 different articles. I went through 2 different journals, and they're all saying the same thing about this particular concept. And so that's really kind of how it's been going. And the way that the book is actually going to be designed is I'm going to introduce these concepts that educators know all about, and we can speak on pretty fluently, but the general public has no idea about. And so I'm going to introduce it like through comics. So I'm going to draw the comic strip, outline the problem, but then also provide those solutions. And so the deep dive also included not only what is the problem, but how do we fix it? As I said, there's a patriotism that comes with being a teacher. It's because we're always trying to fix things. We're always trying to give out something. We're never really trying to take away. And that was one of the big myths that was shattered from the beginning, is that a public opinion about teachers where we were just takers. We were just, we're a drain on the taxpayers. We're a drain on society. We're asking for too many things when we only work 9 months out of the year. Well, we only get paid 9 months out of the year. We just typically stretch it across 12 months. But that myth of we're a drain on society. No, you respect teachers because we're constantly giving. We're never taking from you. Okay, we're giving of ourselves. And what little money does come in from the state to supply curriculum or something like that, that's not enough. You guys know that. I mean, we're all constantly buying for our classroom. We're constantly doing decorations. We're constantly re-adapting new things. And that's why I always told the kids, I said, look, you respect your teachers because we're always giving to you. You may not like what we're giving you, but we're still giving you something, okay? It might be discipline. It might be, that tough love moment, but we're still giving you something. And that's why you have to respect your teachers. So again, as I got into it and those deep dives and putting it all together, if you could see my board right here, there's pins and strings attached to everything. It looks like a crime. Yeah, like a murder mystery of how things are connected. But it is actually producing a lot of good information. And I just hope that the book is actually something that can bring a lot of people together to have the conversations that are needing to be had. I'm so tired of people saying, well, we're still having conversations about it. Well, get on with it already. Okay. It's like, hurry up with your conversation. We need a solution like yesterday.
Yeah.
So,
I do want to point out, I've seen some of his comic strips, some of his drawings, and they're good. They're real good. So definitely need to check that out. I look forward to that. I will definitely be getting that. You was talking about the fact that a lot of the public looks at us as at teachers as only takers. Right? You're just a drain a little bit, or that you're a glorified babysitter in a lot of ways. Like you can, anybody can do your job or things like that. And to which I would say, good luck having my temperament, my level of patience. Like the one thing that I will say, and I've done this before, after a long day at school, if I go to the mall, for example, and there's a lot of kids running around acting a fool, I have a hard time not telling them to stop. You ever do that? I feel like being like, hey, y'all, you need to quit, sit down. Like, hey, you just go sit down. You're in freaking Macy's. Go, just sit in under the clothes. Just sit down.
It gets real bad when you start doing that with the adults.
Yeah, yeah, true. Yeah, true.
Oh man.
Start hitting them with the, I see 3 people sitting down now. I would like to see more. Thank you for the 3 people who are sitting down.
Yep.
Can we get more?
Positive
Oh, 4. There's
narration.
yeah.
I got kicked out of Macy's for counting down from 5, expecting everyone to be quiet.
Right, exactly.
So based on kind of your research and your personal experience, and again, I certainly don't want you to give away the plot here out of the book, but just in general, is there any one reason that kind of sort of stood out that was surprising to you, kind of above the rest? I mean, I think a lot of us know some of the general, challenges that comes along with education, especially for those of us who have worked in the field for a while. What would you say is anything that may be surprising or something that kind of caught you off guard, or is a one thing that really stood out?
Yeah. Well, I've had that question now several times of, well, what is that one thing that is causing all these teachers to jump ship? And it's really tough to narrow it down to one because everybody is so subjectively different in their scenario, in their
Sure.
educational journey, their pursuit, and what matters to some people don't matter to it doesn't matter to others. But there were some patterns that started to stick out, in that the number one thing that teachers, if I were to actually pinpoint as one, it was time.
Yeah.
Time was the biggest thing for them because when you take time, it starts to branch off on all of these other subcategories. It was not only just time to learn new things that you want us to implement, but then there was the time that was required to actually implement it, and that was the big finding right there. Was, if you look at a time frame of a school year, we have our 9 months. Most curricula is designed for 9 months. When do we take our test?
Not 9 months.
Not 9 months, 6 months.
6 months. Yeah.
6 months. So what do we do as teachers is we try and compress that down, that 9 months, into 6 months.
I'm actually doing that right now. Like I was telling the kids, we're starting test prep. It's a 3-week sprint now to the finish line.
Right, exactly. And so you're doing this sprint, it's test prep, you're compressing everything in. And now are they really getting the lasting, enduring understanding that these kids need to operate in the 21st century? That's up for debate. And that really is, but it should be a debate we are having, because if you have all the way until the end of the year, why are you giving your tests 3 months early?
Yeah.
Because
And that's
during
been
the
a
testing
conversation
time,
we've had for a long
got
time.
altered schedules, you've got, and so for a good solid month, you're really not doing deep dives into your curricula and so on and so forth. And by the time you get through with it all and the makeups and everything else, you're tired. I mean, you're ready to go into summer, not just be like, I need summer break. It's I'm in recovery now because I'm burned out. I am mentally tired, and burnout is really something that is underestimated. They say, oh, well, take a week off and you'll be good to go. Doesn't work that way. The new psychological mental pathways that start forming as you constantly get this repetition of despair and just it's not working, becomes a superhighway in your head. Well, that takes a long time to recover from. It takes a long time to fix. And that's why you get a lot of teachers that are on anxiety pills, depression pills, things like that, because they're just like, I can't get out of this rut.
Shout out episode 9.
And that's where... Yeah. Okay. Episode 9.
We just got to talk about anxiety and depression, literally.
Yeah. So, and so when you really do start looking at the time factor, that was a biggie. But surprisingly, having the mismatch of values was equally as strong. And what I mean by it is I value creativity. I value, being engaging. I value saying, look, I got 20% of the kids on my roster not actually getting some. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to design something spectacular and I'm going to stand on desks and stuff like that and do cartwheels if I must. But then I'm told I'm not allowed to do that. So there was a mismatch of values right there, and that becomes a power struggle with administration or central office or a district goal or something along those lines. And it's not the administrator's faults. It's not necessarily even the central office's fault. It's just you're trying to do something to adapt that differentiation part, okay, that we were chatting about prior to the show. But like, you're trying to do it and they don't allow you to do it. But then you also see people saying, well, I'm spending money here because we think we need this, and it doesn't align with like the values that we as teachers have. Wait a minute, you could be bringing in paraprofessionals and ed techs. You can be installing better computers or software for the teachers or for kids to use. You could be doing these things, but instead you're going to invest in something that the kids will never see. And it's just like, that doesn't make sense. There's a value mismatch there. And people get real tired of that year after year after year of just saying, why did you waste that money? Because it's ultimately going to affect everybody's pay, everybody's sense of stability, everybody's sense of feeling like they belong to this as a community, okay, and doing their part. And then all of a sudden you're riffed and you're gone because somebody mismanaged their funds.
Yeah. So the thing is, when we talk about this idea of, of kind of being consistent with our initiatives, right? Like, I know that I have been at 3 different schools, and during that time, I've seen a lot of initiatives come and go, right? So, for example, years ago, I think it's like 4 or 5 years ago, we had the Give 'em 5 initiative, right? That in paper looked really good, but
Yes.
but in practice it was very difficult. And then you have this kind of revolving door of initiatives, and then the next year this comes in, and it makes it difficult for teachers to find any kind of consistency. And by the time the end of the year rolls around, you've sort of got it figured out a little bit. You've got it better. You're getting better at it. You're still not good at it, but you're getting better at it. And then the next year rolls around, and then boom, it's all scrapped, and we start again from zero. And that's been one of my biggest qualms with education just in general, is that we don't fine tune. We don't start at zero, work our way up, and then sort of tweak and fix what's not working to make it something good. We say, oh, it's not working, and then we just trash it. It'd be like writing a draft of a novel and not even trying to edit it, just being like, oh, well, I wasted 6 months, toss it in the trash and not bother. Right. So,
Exactly.
Wes, I don't know if you can speak on that and just from your experience, but is that something that you see come and go a lot in terms of like initiatives and just the direction, what's important or valued kind of from year to year?
Oh, absolutely. I've only been in the field 6 years, so I'm a little bit newer to the field. But even in the 6 years I've been here, I've seen the revolving door of those things come back around. I feel like the pendulum is swinging back. I'm hearing some of the strategies that I heard 6 years ago, starting my career, coming back to focus. So I definitely think that you all are right that it's still the same old thing.
I mean, in 6 years, you would think that you wouldn't see that many different ideologies come through. But it's constantly changing. Now, I will say that over the last 4 or 5 years, at least where I work, we've got significantly better about taking what we're doing and trying to fine tune it and turn it into something really special. I will say that I think that we have done a much, much better job of that. And I hope that we continue that path. And, I don't come in next August and they're like, here's what we're going to do. And like everything's completely different than everything I know. Hopefully that's not the case, but yeah, I could definitely see that being a problem. So, Brian, you were a teacher yourself for 17 years, like you said, and you left to pursue, other opportunities. We like we were saying, we was talking before the show. Would you say that most teachers leave because they want to pursue other opportunities, or do you think a lot of teachers leave because they get into education and realize that it's not as advertised and it's just the challenges are too many? Or do you think it's just kind of a mix of the two?
It's the latter of the two. It's the stressors, because again, I have to go back to like what I said in terms of the myths that surround education. People think right now, okay, well, let's just throw money out. If we pay these teachers more money, which don't get me wrong, more money is a
Yeah, I'll
great
take
thing.
more money,
know?
but I don't think
Yeah,
money is the problem. You hear about teachers
no,
being paid too
no,
little, but
it's
that's not the
not.
problem.
Yeah, no, and because no teacher in the history of teaching has ever said, "I'm going into teaching so I can become
Yes,
wealthy."
you're true.
No
No,
one.
true.
Okay, so why do you think that paying us more is going to make all of these problems go away? It's not. Okay, so when the stressors are there and you don't have the support that you need from the admin, because that was another big thing that they talked about, was support, is supporting with the consistency of initiatives, support with consistency with disciplinary actions or a discipline matrix. Okay, yeah, we all agree we don't want to see kids getting thrown out of school. Every single teacher wants to keep a kid there. Every single teacher wants to say, I want to help this kid if I can. Okay, but sometimes the best lesson is for a kid to fall flat on their face and pick themselves back up, because we gave you every opportunity. Because when you get into high school, it's not like that anymore. When you get out of high school, it's not like that anymore. It gets worse. Okay, and so if we're not actually, if we're not right, exactly, and so if we are actually able to say in sports, for example, um, if you run out of bounds while playing football, if you hit a baseball and it goes out of bounds, the play stops. You regroup and you try again. Why don't we do that with education? We allow these kids to jump out of bounds, run down the sideline, jump into the end zone, and allow them to think they scored a touchdown. Okay, there's no support of the discipline. There's no support. PBIS was a complete disaster. Because in theory, it was great, but it didn't match up with the values. It didn't match up with anything. And just throwing more money doesn't solve that problem. It doesn't solve the problem that we weren't teaching the kids properly how to actually be in school. And so then it becomes this chain reaction. Administrators are getting too many referrals. Okay, they don't know what to do, so they got to prioritize. Okay, central office comes down on top of them saying you've got too many referrals in your system. Get your school under control, and nobody's listening to anybody. And so that stressor becomes one stressor multiplied by 100 other little stressors, and they just say, "I'm done." Lots of teachers, I found out, they quit and didn't even have another job lined up.
Yeah.
They said, I got to get out of here first before I can even think about what I'm going to do next.
I heard of multiple people in a district relatively close to ours, multiple teachers that had left before Christmas, and nothing lined up. You're just like, I can't be here. It is what it is. I would rather just not have money. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah. And take my teaching license and certificate and everything else. Take it, because I'm done.
There's some teachers,
And they're
there's some teachers who have done that. I hear this a lot at in our school and throughout my career as an educator, is that there are many students who just don't know how to play school. And it's our job to try to teach them how to play school. We make a lot of assumptions as educators and as adults that students or kids in general know how to behave or how to act. And it's our job to try to teach them how to do those things. And in some cases, discipline, and for the record, the discipline could be good, it could be bad. Consequences, I guess I should say, can be good, can be bad. That's is needed, to try to make sure that we teach them those lessons and so that they understand. I mean, even if it's something as simple as pulling you aside and having a conversation, right? And know that I'm going to be supported for that conversation is really important. So yeah, I do agree with you though. I don't think of my time, through going through the schools that I've taught at and at my time in education, the amount of people that I've seen leave has been staggering numbers of people. Like when I think about the buildings that I either taught at or am teaching at, and I think about the rooms, I could probably tell you 2 or 3 teachers who have taught in every single room in the building, through over the last 10 years. So I agree. I don't think a single one of those people that left because they were pursuing other opportunities for the most part. I think a lot of them left because the field had either wasn't as advertised, or if they were a veteran teacher, had turned into something they didn't like. Our dad was a teacher for 35 years, and he'll say all the time, like, man, teaching used to be fun. Like he'll say that, and I guess we've got towards where everything's being taught to the test, and everything's assessed, and everything's data driven, and everything is a stressor. He'll be like, dude, we used to just 2:00 randomly, the teachers would all get together and be like, hey, y'all want to play volleyball? Let's go play volleyball. They would just take all the kids out and just go play volleyball. And it wasn't about, oh, you're missing or losing instructional hours. And I'm not saying that that's the answer or that's the way things should be, but if nothing else, it was good for morale, right? It's good for just taking a second, taking a breather, and just chilling out a little bit. So yeah.
Well, it's funny that you actually said exactly that, because one of the big deep dives that I went into was a concept in education right now, something that our kids are actually suffering from tremendously. I originally kind of like coined it as, I just call it like student rot. Okay, it's just like they're just kind of like they're just rotting. Okay, they're not really thriving. They're just kind of like overwatered. And I couldn't put my finger on what it. So that was like my working title for it, until finally I got down into some of the research, and there's something called continuous partial attention, CPA, and that's basically where it's low attention level with no clear action involved.
I'm listening to you in the background while I play this game, or I search something on my phone, or I work on my quote unquote work. It's that level of attention. Okay. Yeah, I could see that. And if I'm being perfectly honest, and I think back to myself as a student, I probably fit that mold a lot of times. A lot of doodling on paper, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. But even doodling would be, it would come into and fall under the category of a multitask. Okay, like you would be listening partially, I know, but you're mostly focused on the doodling at hand because you're bored. Okay, that's really just multitasking. That's just engagement of lessons. That's just engagement with the teachers. You can go back and forth with kids as they're multitasking, but this continuous partial attention, meaning like, you take their phone away, all of a sudden they do not know how to function because there's been no actions. And like, they're like almost stressed. They're shaking. They're like, I need my phone back. I need the dopamine hit that I was getting from texting somebody, or from, playing this game, or doing something that I really was listening to the music. All these kids say, well, I have to listen to music in order to learn. No, you don't.
But it's kind of like my wife. My wife, she wanted my phone one day she was playing Monopoly on multiple accounts. I would like to throw that out there, and my phone was one of them. And she wanted my phone, and I'm like, listen, I've got to go to the bathroom. Like, do you want me to have the most boring experience ever in the bath? What do you expect me to do? Just go without my phone? That's absurd, right?
Yeah,
we have got, like, how am I supposed to sit there for that long? This is going to be a minute. How have we got to a point in society where we can't stand to not be engaged at all times? It's funny because I feel like you can see it in video games. In video games, you look at the type of games that kids play now. Like, me and Wes grew up playing a game called RuneScape, and on RuneScape, you're literally clicking a rock over and over for months. And like, it's a grind. It's a grindy game. It's a long-term goal game. I'm not going to get max level for 6 months or longer. Nowadays, you don't see kids play games like that. But you see them play Fortnite and Call of Duty, matchmaking, 10-minute intervals. Look at TikTok or YouTube Shorts. Everything is 1 minute or less. Boom, boom, boom. I've got to move on to the next thing. That their attention span has lessened and lessened and lessened, and marketers know that. So that's why you see advertisers flocking to things like YouTube Shorts and TikToks. My wife actually said to me recently, and she's on TikTok all the time, she's like, I think TikTok has ruined my attention span. Like, I can't stand to watch an episode on television or movie. I'm like, okay, move on to the next thing, right? So yeah, I can definitely see that.
And here's the other end of that too. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It never shuts off. So if you think about it, this is the most stimulating the world has ever been in its history. And yet we have kids who have access to endless supplies of information, knowledge, activities, this, that, and everything. And they say school is boring. That's a major issue right there. And we as teachers just start saying, hey, look, you know what? I'm tired of fighting this.
Becomes if we can't beat them, join them kind of thing.
I want to do well by this kid. I want to do good by this child, but it's I'm tired of fighting this. You see the memes all the time where teachers say, I literally just said 13 times the instructions, demonstrated it for you, pointed to the paper that you should actually be constructing your graphic organizer on after we've already done this for the past 4.5 weeks, and you still have the nerve to ask me, what are we doing?
Yeah, I get that all the time. There was actually a teacher. He was relatively recently. Oh, it was Wes. He was telling the story. You was telling the story about the kid who asked you about what was it? Was it bears or something? And you were like,
Bears.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So he was talking about his accent, and he said the kid asked him what bears was. He's like, "What's a bear?" And Wes was like, "I don't know if I should be more offended." Wes,
Yeah. So I taught it was a whole unit, right? It was when I first started. I moved up here to Northern Kentucky 7 years ago, and I long-term subbed for the first year. So I came into the position, and I had a lesson on bears. It was something to do with ecosystems. So I taught this entire lesson, and the anchoring phenomena in science is like what you keep referring back to, was about this bear. And so I kept teaching about it. Well, it's like a 6-week long unit, right? So I go through the whole unit, and we're at like the end of the unit, and a kid comes up to me and he's like, "What's bears mean?" I'm like, you waited this long to ask me what that meant. I've taught this entire 6 weeks, and you waited until now. So
Yeah.
it is an issue.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
exactly
it is an issue. This really kind of poor attention span that we're constantly seeing. And to be honest with you, I was all for Chromebooks when they first came in. I've slowly started to get away from that ideology, I think, because I'm starting to see when kids do write on paper, which is rare, it's a struggle. It's a struggle because they've not had to write for so long. At the time, I
Yeah.
used to complain. I'm like, these kids don't know how to type because they're always on phones. They can type on a phone, but they could handwrite and they could type on a phone. But they couldn't type on a computer. And I'm like, oh,
they hit you with this on the they used to.
Yeah, they used to.
You
You don't see that as much anymore. You see they're pretty good at typing because they've had Chromebooks for years now, especially since the pandemic. But now you're starting to see the reverse. You're starting to see handwriting where it's like you spell a word like about you would spell it just ABT, because you're used to using autocorrect or you're used to using spell check. So definitely some issues. So. And this is one of our last questions here, and this is something I think that we really should be kind of focusing more so on, because we've spent a big part of it discussing like the problems that we have in education. So, in your opinion, what are some actionable steps that we can take to improve teacher retention? How can we keep teachers around? What can we do?
Well, first and foremost on that one, I would say, as much as they tell us, and this is they being the public, admin, college, central office, you have to build relationships with kids. You also have to build relationships with teachers too. And I think one of the things that is really does cause people to actually stick around is when they feel valued, like they're contributing something that, hey, I'm going to go to Howard, okay, or I'm going to John. I'm sorry, I forgot I got two Howards here. I'm going to go to John, okay, because he is really good with this, and I'm going to solicit his expertise. But then I'm going to go to Wes because you know what? If I combine John and Wes together, we can have something that like exponentially grows. And then everybody starts to feel valued. But then also starting to think to yourself, in terms of not everybody's excited about everything that goes on in education. Okay. I've heard too many times people were saying, well, you get to work with the kids. I can work with kids anywhere. That's not why I was here. Okay, that's not why I wanted to go into it. My purpose was different. And I came to hate the word passion, because passion is an emotion and it fizzles out. Okay. And so when they say things like, well, you got to be passionate, no, you got to be purposeful about it. It's got to fit what you are good at and what you're strong at, and being able to tap into those human teacher resources that we have. You're going to save a ton of money, because guess what? You can get a team of curriculum designers within the actual school to customize it to the actual kids at all levels. We're all smart individuals. We have, college degrees, master's degrees, some of us PhDs and everything else. Okay, so why can't we sit down and design it? Why do we have to outsource it out to someone else? And I say that as I'm actually working for an educational company. Okay, but at the same point in time, you're not utilizing the strengths that teachers actually have.
And you're not
Okay, if somebody
recognizing
is
it and letting them know that they have those
yes,
strengths. Like that's important.
right, exactly. I got shut down every single time I tried to present the fact that I was writing for my classroom. 100% of the time, I was shut down and told, you cannot do that. You're not allowed to do that. Until finally I started saying, well, I got a master's degree in creative writing. And this story right here is terrible. This article right here is garbage.
Yeah.
The access point is no
So
good.
are you saying the curriculum that you were asked to teach? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, with having no autonomy whatsoever, and no ability to adapt, and no ability to take the story that was there and then level it down to actually meet the kid at their needs. Okay, instead we're asking them to run a marathon and they can't even run a mile. Okay, so if we're not willing to actually put in those kinds of efforts to get those things leveled, to get those things so that we can step them up, well, guess what? They're always going to be bored because they're never going to access anything. Okay, you're going to burn your teachers out. They're not going to feel valued. Okay, so start valuing your teachers. Start getting to know them. Start getting to know that, hey, look, you can do a lot of things in-house in a district, because all of these people who are hired have been vetted by the state. You are vetted through interviews. Why don't you trust them to create things that are best for the kids?
I think a big part of it comes down to just what you were saying in terms of building relationships with teachers, just getting to know them as a person, just popping in the morning and saying hello, right? And this isn't necessarily, I want to make sure that I point this out when I say they. I don't necessarily mean just admin. I'm talking about staff members as a whole. Making sure that other staff members feel valued as well. I mean, just a passing compliment.
Yeah.
Just this is what I like. Hey, I saw you doing this the other day. I thought this was really cool, right?
Yeah,
Teachers
exactly.
are, and when Wes and I have had this conversation, teachers are starved for affirmation, because you never truly know if what you're doing is good. So trying to point out the good things instead of worrying about all the things that they're doing that's not good is a problem, Rod.
Right.
It's just extremely isolating.
Yes.
As a profession, you're very on your own on your island.
Which I'll tell everyone, and I will still say this forever, that I have no plans on ever becoming an administrator. I believe that being an administrator to me looks like one of the most isolating jobs in the world. And I love my admin. I love my admin. But I know that there's probably been times where admin has been part of buildings where you feel trapped, right? You feel as if, okay, it's almost like I don't want to get too close to teachers because I may have to like reprimand them, or I may have to. So you try to separate. You try to separate that friendship idea. I don't want to be friends with the teachers because, I am above them or I'm their boss or whatever. Not necessarily in an arrogant way, but in a way that's like I may have to bring some bad news, to them, or critique them, or something like that, where I believe that's actually one of the worst things you could do. I think that when you get to know people as people and you build respect, and they know that you're there for them, when you finally do say something that's a little negative, hey, I saw in this observation you did this. I think you could.
Mhm.
You've built that respect, and they're more willing to take that information, that feedback, and use it. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And we don't need like surface level puffery. Okay. Like I don't need somebody to say, well, you did such a good job with this one little thing and oh wow, I appreciate. I see right through that. That was just doing my job. I'm good with that. But if somebody really does earn something, okay, they really did a good thing. They got to actually bring in the creator of Minions and have it be broadcast to their students. That was awesome. Okay. That was so cool. And that needed to be recognized. That needed to be because that's what got those kids out of that continuous partial attention and actually locked in on the teachers. It was something that was you couldn't get that from your phone. You couldn't get that from other things. And so being able to recognize that as an event of that was really good teaching. That was really smart. We should be doing more stuff like this. That's the type of stuff that you're really kind of talking about. But when somebody says, "Look, if I left today and I'm just a number, then why am I
Yeah.
here?
Yeah, you want to feel.
Why am I putting in here? Now I'm going to throw on the pay things because y'all ain't paying me enough anyways to stay here."
It's just a matter of
You
feeling
know?
valued, right? As an individual, and
Yeah.
saying what you want to feel irreplaceable, right? You want to feel like that nobody can replace you, like you were saying. You're not just another number, right? So
Yeah.
I'm sure there are plenty.
You want to be part of a
Yeah,
team. You want to be part of
yeah,
a team.
absolutely.
Something worthwhile, something that made an impact, something that said, "Hey, look, together we did it. We solved this puzzle. We were able to transcend these problems and help these kids."
100%. I agree. Now, I'm sure there are plenty other things that we could do, and other problems as well. And I know that we've harped on about a lot of things in terms of um, things that teachers do or maybe admin does. And I understand also that there are other stressors that, to say that students are never the problem is not accurate. Right? There's other ways that
Yeah.
we can go about getting the community involved and parents involved to try to curb some of those things, some of those problems that we hear. And to say that teachers are never at fault is not accurate either. You have teachers who
Right.
leave within the first 5 years because they're just not cut out for the job. And it just is what it is.
Yeah. You should have been a
Just
teacher.
wasn't the right
Just
fit,
what? Yeah.
right, for
Yeah.
them.
And it's nobody's
Some
fault.
people have a
Just is what it is.
false sense.
Yeah, you don't have the temperament. You don't have the content knowledge in some rare cases, I guess. You don't have what it takes to really prevail in this field. So, all right. Well,
Yeah.
that will, I think, about do it. Brian, we do appreciate you coming on and talking with us. I think this was an awesome conversation that a lot of people are going to be really interested to hear. Do
Good. I
we
hope so.
have a general timeline for when you plan on having your book finished?
I'm not gonna let that cat out of the
Okay, all
bag
right.
yet. No, I'm not gonna do that yet.
Well,
Just
we'll be
because, like
waiting.
I
We will
said,
be waiting.
I really am making sure that the information is presented, as I had mentioned before, in a very objective way that not only is accurate, it depicts the problem appropriately, okay, to everyone who is in education and outside of education, but also goes through and at all levels for teachers, admins, the central office, and the general public, providing solutions for each one on each one of those problems. And so, again, to be able to say, well, it's going to be out at this time, now I got to pull back because I want to make sure that it is as accurate as it possibly can because I'm hoping to stimulate the conversation around these big issues.
Excellent. So it's got to take the time, make sure you dot those I's and cross those T's. I understand that there's a lot that goes into that. So
Yep.
we do appreciate it. Again, Brian Hershey, if you are a horror fan, he is a horror author. He does have things on Amazon. If you do like that kind of stuff, again, he will have a book out in the not so distant future discussing these things. So I really think that you should definitely check it out. But that will about do it for episode 10. It's in the books. We made it. So we hope that we will see you next time on Brothers on the Board. Thank you so much for listening and have a great week.